Hi, hello. I'm Rio Caraeff. I'm the Chief Content Officer for Magic Leap. Thank you, Ken and the organizers, for having us today.
Hey everyone, this is Scott Levine. I'm a managing director with Time Warner Investments. We're the strategic venture capital fund within Time Warner Inc.
I'm Keith Boesky. I'm with Boesky and Company, but here today as a board member of Osterhout Design Group.
And I'm Janet Murray. I'm at Georgia Tech. I'm an academic. I do not have to make money from any of this. Okay, can I start by asking questions? Because I already made fun of Magic Leap, so why don't we start right there? So, does it really exist?
That's only because he wasn't here.
Yeah.
Now he's here, it's a lot harder.
Oh, so I said...
And he's a very nice guy, too.
No, I'm sure you're wonderful people, and driven by a vision of enchantment. But what do you see as an actual concrete use of the system, and what is the user going to do when they put on the magic device?
And say what you feel comfortable saying, and don't hurt her if you don't feel comfortable.
Be uncomfortable. Lean into it.
I think that, trying to figure out the right way to answer that question, I think I'll start with Magic Leap itself, which is inherently two companies in one, right? It's a company that cares greatly about content. We have hundreds of people working on making content, what we'll call first-party content.
So first of all, I think since Ken isn't here, I feel an obligation to make something happen as a professor. So I'm going to argue with you. So first of all, I
can't answer the question.
Thinking of it as content is already a red flag for me, because that to me suggests a model where there is like a clothesline, and you put a piece of clothing on the line and you send it down the line.
That is spoken by somebody who doesn't have to make money from anything. So when we talk to simple people who worry about business models, and I understand that we don't want to offend the art of what's being created, but there's content and there's hardware, and content drives adoption. I mean, we all have a great respect for it, but I don't think that was disparaging the work that's happening.
No, I'm not saying that was disparaging. I'm saying that it's not a black box, that the content in digital form has to be an interaction, and it can't be just...
I never said that.
Yeah.
I was trying to talk about how Magic Leap is a full-stack company where we take responsibility for the experiences. We don't just build a product and hope that other people make stuff, right? So we have a platform and a publisher. The platform is focused on letting thousands of flowers bloom, and the publisher is the part of Magic Leap that cares about telling its own story, supporting its own creators, publishing and developing its own titles, right? When I say content, I mean native mixed reality light field content. I don't mean content that's repurposed or repackaged from any other medium.
Great.
I come from a world where content is a word non-artists use to talk about the art of others, right? So I'm using it in a certain way, but not in any way that's disrespectful.
Don't go using the C
or
word,
disparaging. I tell people I would never want to sit in a room with Bono or Bruce Springsteen and say, "That was some awesome content you just made." I love that content you did on stage right there. That they would say, "Get this guy out of the room." So I care greatly about the art of creation, and we have a lot of respect for that at Magic Leap.
So then great, and I think one of the things I said in my talk was that we need to have a stable platform in order to move things forward. So you're saying you have a stable platform, and now you're making applications that exploit the affordances of that platform. That all sounds like the right thing to do, but can you give us an example of what is an application that will be native to Magic Leap, that where we can get a sense of what the interactor is actually going to do?
Well,
it could be a small part of, you don't have to.
You're only talking to us kids. Nobody's listening.
I'm not going to give specific examples of content that we're making. I will talk about specific examples of what you can only do in mixed reality, right? So for us, it's about the seamless and persistent integration of the digital world into the physical world in such a way where the atoms and the photons are one to your conscious mind, right? So if you can't distinguish between it, then that's real to you. I think that's the bar that we look at. You're
So
shaking your
that's
head.
just, you're saying we're going to make magic. You're not saying, but I don't think that we do distinguish. I think we can have a transparent interface. So I think we can have things that are virtual that we can move through as we move through the space.
Well, I think
that'd be good.
you're pasting a lot of responsibility on Rio here, and as much as I'd like to see him try to dig out of it, maybe I'll dive in. And you talked about it in your talk, and I think it might have been Ori who talked about it in the other in terms of film. So the first thing you talk about is platform. What we don't have today for any of these media, let's see, I didn't say this media, let's say these media, that's how I get confused. So any of these media is we don't have a grammar. So it gives us, we don't have the ability for a visionary creator to communicate with an audience because we don't know. If I film the outside of this building, and then I film us talking, and we're watching a movie, we all know that we're inside that building that we saw the outside of. That's not because it came down from God and the Greeks didn't even create it with the 3-act structure. That's because film industry over 100 years developed it. So I go with Ori only, I go a few years
because
earlier.
we know it's a film. We're
Yeah.
not, so that the origin story of film
Okay.
is that people
So
thought
now-
that it was a real train coming
Okay,
at
so
them.
now
But we
you-
don't think that anymore.
But you called Rio on content, so now I'm going to call you on platform.
Okay.
So, coming from the game business, and we have new platforms, which is the box that we plug into a TV every few years. We don't really have a new platform. We have a new form of media here, and there are a bunch of different companies in terms of hardware and delivery service that are attacking it in different ways. Magic Leap is one, ODG, Meta, and too many to even name. So we have to figure out a way for the audience to understand and for the visionaries to communicate. That's the first step. The good news is it's actually been going on for a while. So we know a lot about what works and what doesn't work because when we watch television, and especially in sports, we can see something like watching a football game, that's augmented reality. Or soccer game, football, soccer, use them interchangeably. You got the line of scrimmage, the first down line. If you want to know what doesn't work, talk about Fox putting the red tail on a hockey puck. That went away right away. So we've got some ideas that
Worked in
Why would
football,
they
the
do
yellow.
that?
Excuse me?
Why would they put a red tail on it?
So you can see the puck.
So you could see the puck when it was going. So, and now we're starting to learn more on the handheld device. These are still the wrong devices for augmented reality, and as we move it to people's face to the right place, we're going to learn even more, but that's a
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, that's right.
So let me, this is the AR future panel. Let's go down, Scott, starting with you, just go there and then come back. How do you define the future? Like a lot of these companies or organizations or research is in the present, but how do you define the future?
It's a thing happening a couple minutes from now.
Yeah.
It's just always out
Yeah.
there.
So Scott, at Time Warner, how do you think about the future?
The future of how content will be.
Yeah, just related to AR.
Oh, look, we certainly within our investment group are very bullish on AR. We've done a few investments in the VR AR space. Look at 100+ startups in the sector. AR certainly has the potential to transform how people consume and interact with media, media entertainment. And for now, I'll separate anything else from the enterprise side or healthcare or any other sectors. For us, it's at early days. There's lots of interesting AR experiments happening at HBO and at Warner Brothers and across the brands at Turner. We're not, unlike Magic Leap, we're not in the platform business. We've just started putting our toes in direct-to-consumer businesses, but clearly we are mostly in the wholesale media business. But we're certainly interested to see what interactions might be possible, how storytelling will be delivered in these kinds of platforms. I think AR is a fantastic medium that will enjoy the benefits of Moore's Law, that people will get better and better screen resolutions and better tracking, While it'll be fantastic on mobile phones, hopefully eventually it'll get to headsets that'll be enabled at good price points for everyday consumers. And I think these things will get cheaper and cheaper for mass consumers. And certainly as a company for Time Warner, we're in the business of making mass media content. And that's how we generally look at it, through that lens. But look, we're very bullish on the future and where these devices can go. For now, our divisions are experimenting, but we're certainly making active bets on who will be the
Before I
winner.
jump to Keith and you hear your definition as a board member of ODG, the cars of the teens, they had the crank, but they also, the roads were dirt, and when it rained, they would, wash away. 5G has some real potential. Are you weaving that into the future and thinking about that in content?
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're actively looking at these potential applications. There are certain things today, AR, certain pieces of AR and VR content are extremely data intensive. Even downloading some of this content can be very time consuming over cellular today. With these enhanced data rates, we see a lot of interesting opportunities to stream content that you couldn't do today, not just in video, but high-def video, but in volumetric AR, which we think could be very, very interesting.
Great, thanks. Keith, future, how do you define it?
Yeah, I mean, people ask about the roadmap at ODG a lot. I was just telling these guys how nice it was to be Boesky and company and say anything I wanted, and the first thing you did is put me in the seat of ODG talking for a company. The roadmap's really easy to figure out. If you look at the 7s that are enterprise glasses that are bigger and heavier than the ones that I've got right here that are coming out, you can see that we're going smaller, more powerful, wider field of view, all of those things. In terms of what we've got right now, we were just certified as the first wearable that is THX certified for cinema viewing, which makes a lot of people happy. In terms of the future, I don't think it's really a big mystery. We've got the Snapdragon 835 chip, was the same thing that's in a Samsung Galaxy S8. We actually launched before them at CES and had it on the floor working before they did. But we don't want to rub their nose in it or anything, but we did. And so if you look at all the function of a phone, it's no mystery where we're going right now. Also, with our first distribution deal we announced is China Mobile with 800 million subscribers and rolling out 5G. Again, we only talk about the things you can put on your face. Sorry to make you upset, Janet. Not to be too corporate speak, and right now what we put on your face is these glasses. But like I said, you can figure out the roadmap on your own.
So you just mentioned streaming. Can you watch Netflix on your ODG?
I might be able to show you Amazon and Amazon Prime right here. Yeah, and we've got people that have been years.
So do you think the future is going to be wearing headset and, instead of getting an 8-pixel screen or whatever the next thing is, getting something on your face to see video?
Well, there are experiences like Janet's talking about that have to be catered to the unique sales propositions of the glasses. So there are things that you have to do when you're doing something in AR, and it's not worth bringing Angry Birds over. Sorry if there are rodeo people here or watching. It's not worth bringing Angry Birds over just because it's Android and we're running Android. But when you take Netflix and you take Amazon Prime and you take regular video and move it from here on your commute to here, that's transformative. So there are some things like that we will do. When you're flying on an airplane, you've got a position-independent IMAX screen, and you're right here watching. That's pretty cool. And you can also see the flight attendant as she's walking down the aisle, or he's walking down the aisle right before they bump you in the arm, so you're not jarred like they put a Samsung Gear on your face. That's some pretty cool stuff. So yes, there are VR elements, there are regular compute elements, and then there are AR elements.
Great. So Janet, and then Rio, and then Ken, if you can hear us upstairs, we're ready for you. Janet, how do you define the future? You wrote a book that kind of defined the future at another point in time. When you think of the future with your students, with the work you do, how do you define it?
So I always say that it's easier to see the direction of change than to see the pace of change. And of course, when you're making bets of money, you're betting on the pace and you're betting on a particular path. But if you think about, and I think, so for those who live in that world, I would say the things that are worth betting on are things that would bring our hands into play in some way. I don't think that it's And until then, I would say that the mobile platforms are much more promising, and that they have not been exploited enough because we haven't come up with enough things that are like what actually works about Pokemon.
Okay, so do you have Yelp installed on your phone?
Do I have Yelp? I don't really use it.
You don't use Yelp?
Yeah.
How many people have Yelp on their phone? How many people use Monocle? Okay, 2009, brilliant application. You can walk out on the street right here and hold it up, and you can see little postings of all the reviews for every restaurant.
Yeah.
Astounding. But that's
Yeah.
because people don't walk around like this with their phones.
No,
So-
but that's because they don't actually want that information that much. So the
If you're
question
hungry
is,
standing on the street, okay, I got a better one for you.
if you're hungry,
Okay,
you'll get out
okay.
your phone.
Here's
you'll
an
plan
application.
it in
Okay,
advance.
okay. How
So
about
you- so
how about Got to Pee?
Got
Brilliant application. Tells you where the public restroom is.
I'm with you.
You want that one?
Yeah.
But we don't walk around like
Yeah,
this.
Janet,
But-
let me ask
but
you
I
this.
don't think-
Oh, Janet, you
I don't
talked
think
about
you
hands.
want to look at like this for the pee.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
So-
absolutely would.
so
If you're sitting on
Janet-
the street here,
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to see the building
So,
light
hold
up
on,
and
Keith,
say,
but-
there's the restroom?
Keith, I want to explore something here. So
I mean,
Janet,
you're not going to pee on the...
Janet,
okay.
you mentioned hands, and I'm not sure. Are you talking about holding a brick or a tablet, or are you talking like Minority Report?
I'm
And-
talking about, well, of course, eventually Minority Report.
because
yeah.
your
But-
hands
but what
above
I'm
your
saying-
heart.
Come on, Rio. You can
Hold
make her
your
so
hands-
happy right now.
I'm saying that we've got.
Go ahead, Rio. Say it. It's right there. Say it.
I'm gonna refrain from
Go
commenting.
ahead.
Yeah, no, you're going next. But Janet, in terms of hands, the hands above the heart. Do you think there's going to be a mobile kind of mouse, or there's going to be AI reading your eye and voice?
Who cares?
It's
why do you say-
I don't have to make
it's-
money on it. I don't care how it works. I just want to be able to have my hand. So if I've got the HoloLens on, it's really, so we have them and we're making things for it, but we really need to have something else, a leap motion, or tracking something. We need something else because it's not enough to make anything that you can play with without having your hands. And I didn't get the VR things for my students, but we got them this year because we got room scale with the hand controllers.
Yeah. So Rio, we just went down the list on down the row on the future. You know, how do you think about it? What can you talk about, either as a private citizen or as a member of your organization?
I think what I'll say is that we think that everything that we're doing is about trying to move forward into what we think is the next wave or the next phase of computing. It's not about incremental, it's about going native, right? So we're not interested in saying, how do we put a screen in front of your face? We're not interested in saying, how do we put the digital world floating on top of the physical world? We're thinking about native mixed reality, native cinematic reality. What stories can you tell? How can I be more connected to my friends and family? How could I be more informed about the world around me? How could I be more entertained? How could I collapse time and space and have me sitting in LA and Keith in Rome, and he shows up in my apartment dressed, as a C-3PO, volumetric avatar, and we have a next generation, FaceTime experience together. So how
That's
can
more disturbing than you can imagine.
right? So it's
And not just the robot
but
part.
it's an actual use case. I'm glad we finally got a use case out of Magic Leap.
anything that the problem with broad and enabling technologies is that they're literally anything. How do you boil it down into medical imaging? I could talk about all of the ways that you can improve CAT scans and MRIs. I can talk about all the ways that I can be more productive at work, or I can design automobiles or rocket ships. I can talk about the ways I can be more entertained, more productive, more informed, more communicative. Anything that you could imagine you can do. It's Magic Leap's role to facilitate that and put that in the hands of creators, right? So we don't know what people will make. We want to give them the tools so they can experiment and iterate and figure that out.
So
Right?
here, I have
And that's a
follow-up
part
question.
of what the company's doing. We have developers today working with our hardware, and we'll be doing more of that in the near future.
So here's my follow-up question. So a lot of alumni from my lab at the Media Lab, from my group at the Media Lab, are working at Apple, and I'm always struck when I talk to them about how compartmentalized they are. and they don't necessarily talk across departments. And I think, Magic Leap, I don't want anyone to crater in this space, but you guys have kind of been very closed as to what's going on. And do you think that's the future of innovation? I mean, you see the new Apple phone, more leaks than usual in an age of Twitter and Snapchat and other things. It's harder and harder to kind of be closed and not be open. And as a chief content officer, you're going to have to build relationships with a lot of people in this room and other people. So I'm just curious, is the future closed and kind of, building up demand, or what have you learned in the role that you're playing? Again, Keith was supposed to be asking these questions, so I don't know if that's a good question, but there you go.
I think it's a fair question. The way I'll rephrase it is when you look at the nature of innovation and the nature of a company, right? On one end of the spectrum, you have a multi-year Kickstarter campaign, right? We're going to raise money from our customers. We're going to do everything out in the open and in the clear. We're going to get feedback, from our customers continually and perpetually. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's a perfectly valid way to do it. That's what Oculus did. On the other end of the spectrum, you have, companies that are a little bit more focused on making sure that they have a singular vision, and they're focused on realizing it. And then when it's ready, they'll show their customers and bring it to market. There's nothing wrong with that approach either. They're perfectly valid ends of the spectrum. And each company and each founder has the right to do things either way. From my point of view as the chief content officer, I would love to be able to have everybody on the planet making stuff with Magic Leap. I just need to make sure that my hardware works and my software works, and I have a means of supporting them, and I have a means of distributing it, and I have a means of providing it to them. And all those flags have to go green, before I can do that. So we look forward to, there are many developers working with Magic Leap today. There'll be more every day going forward. But we're doing it in a private developer program way, not in a public developer program way, not unlike a game console or not unlike a mobile phone. You don't see the iPhone 8 being publicly tested
Rio,
in the
I'm
field,
struck
but it
by
certainly
what you just
is.
said, because I think a lot of tech companies are showing stuff much earlier than I think Steve Jobs would have shown stuff in this era. And I feel like some of the way that you guys are waiting for the green flags is maybe more like how he would have done it. Let me ask you, do you want to ask any questions to our other panelists? They ask questions of you.
I think maybe a question for Scott is how do you see the transition from making content to shooting content? Or what's the how does a 6-year-old in Tokyo, make content for mixed reality without having to learn Unity and Unreal? How do you get to a volumetric future in whole or in part?
Sure. So a few questions to unpack there. One is, when you're making content for the AR, VR world, it's very different than making 2D content that we think about for TV and film. You're making film or TV content for 2D. It's a very passive experience. You sit on your couch in your living room, you watch it, you watch exactly what the director wanted you to watch in certain scenes and camera angles and so forth. When you're producing content for VR or AR, it's much more of an engaging experience for the end user. The user can do something and the content might react. The user can look around and engage. And so the ways that people create that content are, by definition, much different. In terms of creating this content, there's interesting tools on the CG side of things. There are interesting tools on the biometric capture. There's interesting tools on the 360 side. We're certainly seeing people doing interesting content creation tools all around. We are investors in a company, 8i, that does biometric content capture, where basically you stand in a soundstage with 40 different video cameras looking at you from all different angles. And it can capture you from any different angle, and then you can walk around that person virtually. That's certainly one. There are a lot of other cheaper ways to do it as well. You could do it with a depth kit, like with a Microsoft Kinect and a DSLR. There are people that'll do it for professional level. There are people who do it for 6-year-old kids. There most likely will be smartphone-enabled ones. I'm very intrigued by all the SLAM solutions coming out of Facebook and from Snapchat and most recently from Apple. I think the ability to do low-end UGC content capture, I think, will be very, very interesting, or maybe even a series of smartphones.
You have the CTO of Pokemon Go, Niantic. He's looking for some new stuff, so it could be good.
Fantastic.
So
But also
Janet,
for the-
you
for
asked
the
a
6 year-
question.
for the- for-
Rio, you asked a question. Keith, why don't you ask a question?
Well, no, I'm just saying for the 6-year-old kid, I think you're talking about Otoy, and they're running on glasses. You may be talking about somebody else, but Otoy's been doing great stuff with us in terms of capture and delivery. We've got some content demos here from them as well. But when you say the 6-year-old kid, Rio, and not Unity, Unreal, your 6-year-old kid, because I know you and I see pictures of him, is going to be using Unity before you know it. I mean, my kid was building a game in Unity when he was a little older than that, but
Yeah.
it came out
I
later.
think what I'm trying to focus on is, I think in order for any new medium to be culturally relevant, it has to be what I call many to many. Many people making things for many people.
Right.
I
It
think
can't be a small amount of people making things for a large amount of people. It can't be unicast in that way. It can't be a game console where a small amount of developers make things for a large
But
amount of people.
that's the beauty of these
Right.
of the tools that are out right
Right.
now, and the way that people can do it, and the access to the internet is the kids. It's native. If you haven't seen it, there's this video online called Broken Magazine. Have you ever seen this with the kids with Broken Magazine? These 2-year-old kids sit with an iPad and do this, and they get magazines, and they try to do the same thing, get frustrated.
Yeah.
This is native to them, and they don't understand that they can't. So I watched the progression of my kid with these programming tools, and he had to use Maya and all of this stuff, but at a really young age. He just downloads the thing for free on his own, goes on YouTube, figures out how to use it, and he's building stuff.
Yeah.
So you'll appreciate it. The thing that he built, he recreated the Del Monte Cup with exact
So,
roads, with
Keith,
captures.
I'm
from
going to go to
Carmel.
Janet to ask a question. Do you have a question you want to pose?
Sorry, just one last point on,
Yeah,
on
sure.
this. In terms of content, I don't think it'll be kids programming in Unity. There are a lot of very interesting tools now coming out from startups that enable people, even 6-year-olds, to create instantaneous VR content. The company Mind Show in LA, where you put on HTC Vive and some headsets and handsets, and you can instantly step into the shoes of an avatar. No programming, you just create your content and then block your shot and you're done. There's Limitless VR up in Seattle. They're making also tools where you can step into a Vive, create content immediately. I mean, the question will be, will it be easy enough to use, and will there be enough supported hardware out there that'll be like YouTube, where the barriers to create a YouTube video are extremely small.
And that's the big issue, is getting enough of installed base. There's no one company that's going to carry the entire market.
Yep.
So people make games. You mentioned the console. The reason people are making massive investments now is because there are 3 consoles. Again, thank Nintendo, now there are 3. So there are 3 consoles, so people make it. So we need the hardware platforms to move forward, get to market, and succeed so that the the artists can think that they're going to be able to get a return on the investment that they're making in the market.
So you guys, before I just have people say a closing statement on the AR and future, Janet, any questions for the panel?
So yeah, I guess I still have the same question, which is, what is an example of an interaction that we're going to be able to do that you think in 5 years from now is going to be?
Well, we're doing it right now on the
really-
enterprise side. On the enterprise side right now, we've got surgeons who are using it in the operating room. So you can map a surgical path, you can see it. You don't have to look like this with arthroscopic. You can, where your neurosurgery, back surgery, or that's being done.
So it's
We've
mapped
got-
onto the body.
Yeah. We've got
And so
EMTs.
what are they wearing?
Glasses, these. You've got, well, actually the R7s, the earlier version. We've got EMTs that can, during golden hour, when somebody's right there, they have the doctor looking over their shoulder. And also that doctor in the operating room, he can call up and say, ask Bob, get a second opinion. Bob's on the golf course with a phone, and he can get there by telepresence. We've got all kinds of telepresence applications. Anything where you would hold a
Great.
computer or
For
manual.
time, let's just go down the panel. Rio, do you want to go first or start over there? Closing statement on the future. Magic Leap, what are you thinking?
So many thoughts. Where to begin? I feel like what it's part of the responsibility of the platform is you need to focus on the tools of creation. The how do I let people get their hands on this so they can then realize their dream and make something happen, whether they're a storyteller, a sculptor, a musician, a surgeon, anybody in the spectrum. So I think that's what I focus on, is how do I let thousands of flowers bloom? How do I abstract the complexity of creation to allow anybody to put their fingerprints on the world? And that's what I think is necessary in order to make this more than a hobby, more than a small business. It needs to be culturally relevant, and in order to do so, everybody needs to be able to make things in mixed reality.
So you have major players in this room. You have the media, you have high net worth individuals, you have innovators, you have other talented people that just really care about the space. Any other closing statements you want to make before we?
No, I'm good.
And Rio, thank you. You know, I know folks on your team don't get out much. You're busy inside, so appreciate you being here. Scott, what do you got?
So one of the most interesting things we've seen, and again, for maybe 3 to 5 years, it goes back to one of the earlier panelists today, speakers, is the ability for people to engage with their favorite characters in terms of entertainment. You won't just see Mickey Mouse on the screen, but you'll be able to talk and interact. They can understand what you're saying, and they'll talk back to you. And you won't just be watching your favorite character in a cartoon.
I don't think Janet agrees with you.
You don't agree?
No.
I'd like to see what you can make.
I don't
That's
Bugs
really
Bunny.
what I'd like to see.
I figured I throw a bone to our
Instead of
friends in
criticizing
Burbank.
other people, to focus on what you could make.
But I think it's an untapped. It's certainly not proven and it's untapped. But I think the technology will catch up to where we can get there in terms of what is a real character and how does a character interact with people, not just a script. It's very early. People, we've seen startups trying to do these things, and it's intriguing about what the opportunities are. It's a much different way for storytelling.
So Jan, you have the last word. So Keith, what do you got?
And we keep hearing the glasses are 5 years away, but I mean, I'm wearing them right now, and you guys can all see them in the demo. The glasses are now, the technology is now, and what we're looking for is the content. Enterprise applications are super easy. We hold them up in the air and they come flying at us. 45% of the Fortune 500 already bought our enterprise glasses. We want creators to figure out what we're doing to make the glasses relevant for consumers. We've got a lot of stuff right now, and we want to have a lot more. And we want the things that are native for augmented reality. I'll give you something right now in the hallway that'll make you want these glasses. We want more. We want more, and we want things that are native and created for it, and want to get people going on it.
Great. So Janet, you have the last word of the panel, and then I'm going to ask if 2 or 3 people want to ask a question of anyone on this panel, and Rio.
So I'm just going to reiterate what I said before, which is that I share the vision that it should be a blended reality, and that people are going to want to converse with characters. But what I wince at is the notion that you can just make it, that technology alone can get us there, and that we don't, that we won't have to have a lot of baby steps along the way in order to create the conventions that allow us to know what are the boundaries. I mean, we feel in a movie that we're really there because we know we're not there. And it's the same thing. Right now we're sort of drunk on the sense of presence in augmented reality, but actually it's not real. And so we need to learn what is the boundary, because if we try to talk with a character and we're not scripted enough, then it raises our expectations too high and we're going to be disappointed. And if we think that a shark is going to land in front of students who aren't wearing glasses and they're just going to all hallucinate.
But I talk to my Alexa at home all the time, and I understand it's a limited vocabulary. And as long as I have that understanding, it's fine. She's not going to be my best friend, but she can play a song from Spotify for me.
And I think maybe that Alexa, that those things are training us to have those conversations. I think it's a very interesting insight.
So you guys, thank you for being on this journey with this panel. Let's do 2 questions from the audience. Anyone? Let's see, sitting down.
Give me an example of that? Can you give me specific examples of how AR will improve that experience?
I think in that example I gave, we can talk about medical imaging, right? How do I take essentially a a 3D scan of the brain or composited slices of scans, and how do I visualize that in 3D? Right? I need.
Well, we have stereoscopy. So
Well, you do, but data visualization AR is hugely exciting. This is one of the areas I'm most excited about because, like you're talking about, going to stereoscopy, and I can hold it, I can put it in front of me, and Moran just walked in from Meta where they're doing that with the brain. Now, what happens when you've got these massive data sets that you can walk into, and you can walk in and look around? And this isn't voodoo future stuff. This is, we can do this now.
Yeah.
But with
a little deeper because you are speaking from the platform of the future of AR. And the example you gave was a navigation example, which existed and has existed for 20 years. So what I find interesting is
that's not what we're hearing from the hospitals and doctors that are using it.
Well, I'm one of them. I'm one of those guys. I've been doing this for 15 years. So what I'd like to know is I need a little deeper, a little more of an example, a little something that I can sink my teeth into of how it's going to evolve our current state into something better. We have workstations. I use stereoscopy. I use VRTs, volume renderings. But I want to know how you're speaking from Magic Leap, huge, right? Huge investment, seeing the future. Speaking from ODG, and you're talking about augmented, heads-up display. But I just want to know exactly how
But
is
is
this
it,
going to improve.
I think we've got to talk more about it outside. That's not exactly what we're
Right
talking
now,
about.
Give me an example. Right now.
Yeah, so,
Right now.
yeah, so, Mr. Doctor, we'll take that outside, but thank you for bringing that. One other question, want to, go.
A lot of the conversation was about how, not a lot of it, but there were portions of the conversation about obviously examples, and then how do we take this from a kind of a small scale individual application to a large scale communal application, whether that impacts economics or kind of cultural integration. So I'm an architectural lighting designer. We focus a lot on facade lighting and advertisements, and how do you create mass media through kind of small-scale applications. Another area that we look at, of course, is integration, touchscreen integration. So one of the examples that I was thinking of potentially, and you can.
So what's the question? Just
My question is.
you sound really
is
bright,
this,
by the way. But what's the
I'm
question?
sorry?
You sound bright, but what's the question?
Thank you. So my question is basically, is this some type of an example? Everyone's looking for an example. You clearly have patent or protecting your intellectual property. Totally respect that. So my question is an example of, let's just say you're in the center of a city or city center, and you don't want to put a screen in front of you or wear a pair of glasses or goggles and say, this is where a restaurant is, this is where a toilet is, this is what our universe and our solar system looks like, right? These are all great AR applications. What if we had some sort of central place, kind of like in the MTA, where people could go on an individual basis and look at their train schedule and say, this is where I need to go, when I need to go. What if we had basically some sort of visual screen of a large scale in central parks or in urban developments where different companies could work together and collaborate and overlay their platforms, so we have a screen for, let's say, tourists or people in a general area, and they can look at that screen and have either
got it.
an individual
So I'm going to
station
see
or
if anyone
workstation.
wants to respond to that. And then David Smith, I'm going to call on you to ask the final question. Thank you.
I think fundamentally what you're talking about is what we call the metaverse, right? It's the digital world persistently in the physical world in a communal and shared way. So I can extrapolate it out to, I'm an artist and I want to create a dragon that lives in Central Park, and only people who come within 100 yards of that dragon can see and interact with that dragon. Is that something, is your question, is that going to be possible? Or how do you regulate public spaces to determine who has the right to put the dragon there and who owns that dragon? And what if I don't want to see the dragon, right? And you start to get into all kinds of issues around, public versus private spaces and communal versus private experiences. It's a complicated, nested question. And I think what you're talking about is for the municipal good, right, of the populace. What are the applications that can be deployed? Yeah.
Dragon so much as they want to know exactly the municipal good, where they're going to go. You're a tourist, you don't know where you're at. You want to know where a major.
I think the beauty is you can do that.
Get our last question. David, what do you got?
So this might be a little more difficult. What happened when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone to us? He really created a content display system, a content consumption system. Virtually every single thing I've seen in AR, except for a few toy systems, are the same. The early days of computing, we actually did what Engelbart calls bootstrapping. We could actually increase the capability of the system from within the system, and that's a necessary thing, I think, for you to really discover where this thing can go. If you can't make that change within it, you can't go anywhere. What is the opportunity there? Particularly, we look at there's 1.3 billion phones being created every year. We're seeing people getting phones before they get indoor plumbing. So when we look at kind of the huge impact that this could have, where do you see that? And what are you guys addressing that opportunity in a fundamental way that allows, that enables the rest of the world to be first parties in this conversation?
Yeah, I think you just reinforced the need for got to pee. See that? You were just talking about it. Phones before indoor plumbing. What do you think they're putting on their phones? That app, so they can know where they can go. Absolutely. And a lot of people forget, you pointed out Steve Jobs and the iPhone, a lot of people forget it wasn't an open ecosystem and it didn't even have Wi-Fi. So you're exactly right. It grew and people defined it. And I think that's an exciting opportunity for all of the platforms. We've got a device that's Android-based, has our reticle layer on top of it, but we're using it for other people to open up. One of the missions of the company was to be able to give people ubiquitous access to their data whenever they want it.
But one of the things you notice, even the iPad today, they wouldn't let you have a programming system on it. And when we tried to put Squeak on it or Scratch, it was really, they said no. Right. So I sort of see that as, there's an intense desire for control, and I'm sure you all share that. Because
well, it's a quality of experience. This goes back to my old business of games, where Atari cratered because everybody could make everything, and Nintendo succeeded because they limited what can go on the platform.
Yeah, but that was a closed system.
To limit for quality. No,
computers are open, and quality of experience of a programming IDE isn't that great, honestly. It's not something that a lot of people are going to use, but the fact that it's there allows the rest of us to participate. And I think that's the key thing. You're looking at quality of experience as a fundamental thing. You can control that by basically disenabling you to do anything else.
Well, certainly, Apple, with their announcement yesterday with their AR kit, right, certainly opened up access to this, unlike, say, Snapchat, which is a completely closed system.
Yeah, but it's not on the system. You can't do it from within.
Facebook.
You can only do it from outside, right? That's the difference.
I'm not sure I understand the distinction.
You can program a computer with a computer.
Right.
You cannot program an iPhone with an iPhone. You cannot, today that I'm aware of, program an AR system from within the AR system, right? And there's no plans for that, right?
I think that happens over time. You will see the ability to, you'll see a generous definition of the word author and create, and you'll start to see mixed reality editors, so you don't have to make on a 2D computer for a 3D computer. I think that's inevitable that happens over time. I think it's unrealistic to think it all happens all at once.
It has me thinking about the rules of kashrut, to tell you the truth.
Kosher?
Yeah, exactly. Programming themselves.
Just so you know, I'm through the miracle of augmented reality. I am now John Werner. It's incredible. It looks so real, doesn't it? Yes. I think he's taller. There was that interview.
Do we have to do this all over again? Oh, they just got here?
Yeah, sure. We're going to start from the beginning. No, yeah.
Okay, so Janet asked Rio about platforms, and then...
And he never answered.
Okay. There was an interview that went along. I did want to ask one last question to all of you. This is obviously riffing on my opening.
There's your Steve Jobs reference. One more thing.
One more thing. That's right. Let's go far enough in the future, because obviously, speaking to David's a question, we do fashion reality in reality. I mean, of course we do. Like, that's how we do it. You make clay. Hey, I use my hands. I make something that's different in reality. So we're used to the idea of being in something and making something in that thing. Whatever is your own personal clock, where you say, let's go far enough in the future where we can stop using these phrases, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. We're far enough in the future with the phone that I just talk to my friend. We don't say, I access the telephone. It's a successful technology, we forget about it. Whatever is your personal time frame for it is just reality, could give some example of what you think would be interesting about that normal reality. Anybody?
I'll give one. So I would like to see historical places like a ruin that I want to go visit it, and I want to see it reconstructed, and I want to see all the I want to go to the Roman Forum city and everything that has happened there, and everything that one could learn about the society from that is really rooted in that place. I want to see it displayed to me, and I want my navigation of the virtual to totally map my navigation of the physical, so that when I'm looking at the virtual, it's directing my attention deeper into something that's there, but it may not actually be there. I will be, and I want a time slider as well, so that I can time travel through the same place.
So good news. I'll give you a pair of these. You can have that right now. The
Okay.
future is
Great.
as soon as we walk outside.
Let's.
We got it.
Okay.
I'm on board with Janet. I mean, it's ubiquitous access to your information. When I want to know more about things, when I want to know more about complex things like she's talking about, or seeing that weird bug, or also just walking through a conference, and we all walk through trade shows, and there are people in our business that we know, and we don't know who we know, and they walk up, and so just facial recognition, not creepy kind, just enough to tell me this is who that person is. So just access to information. It's all these things we're talking about being post-human, cyber, whatever we want to say. We can do it better living through electronics.
We'll just call it human.
Or just human, yeah.
I think for me, one of the most interesting applications we've seen from very early days, and I touched on this earlier, is the idea of virtual telepresence, that you and I could be sitting across the world from each other, but we can talk to each other and engage and walk around each other as if we're in the same space. I think I could be sitting on a plane, you could be sitting in a closet, I could be, whatever.
You wouldn't know I was in a closet.
Yes.
We learn so much about people on these panels.
But the idea is that it's an idea of AR in terms of social interaction. And I think there's only so much closeness you can have with someone over the telephone. There's only so much closeness you can have on a video teleconference for 2D video. But I think the idea of volumetric real-time interaction with 2 people, 10 people, 100 people, everyone in this room, I think will be transformative the way people will interact with each other in the future. And potentially we won't need to be physically next to each other as much as we do today.
I think whoa. Is that me? No. I was trying to parse.
Audio AR.
But you felt like we were here.
I was trying. Hello. I was trying to parse the question, but I think for me it comes down to I leave the house. I don't have my intimate wearable, with me. What's it going to take for me to turn around and drive back to the house, right? Is my daily habit that I do every day, many times a day there, and that becomes indispensable to my life. I don't have it with me, so my life feels hollow and empty without it, right? It's so additive to my person, to my consciousness, to my productivity, to my entertainment, to my communication, that I can't imagine not having it with me at all times. And we call it, at Magic Leap, does it pass that 1 mile test, right? I'm 1 mile from my house, am I gonna turn around and go back and get it? Or am I just going to say, well, I don't need it today because I really don't need it every day?
I can think of an analogy with using an older technology. I'm driving to work. I get about halfway there, and I realize, right, I'm naked. And then it's like, no, I'll just keep going. So it'll be kind of like that.
Yeah. So if it's not at that point, it's not mission critical for 1 billion people on the planet.
Thank you. Great panel. Thank you very much. Thank you.